Dilek Tunan, you're watching A News. Let's have a look at today's top stories. We did it, Hungary's new leader says after the Tisza party defeats Viktor Orban in elections. We will not bow to any threat, says Iran after Trump vows to blockade the Strait of Hormuz. And Pope Leo XIV kicks off his 10-day trip to Africa. His first stop is Algeria. Election results in Hungary have marked a major shift in the country's political landscape. The opposition Tisza party has secured a landslide victory, resulting in Viktor Orban conceding defeat after 16 years in power. Attention now turns to the final results and the possible political changes ahead.
Hungary's long-serving nationalist leader Viktor Orban has conceded defeat in Sunday's election. The result marked a landslide victory for the opposition Tisza party and is seen as a political setback for some of Orban's allies in Russia and in the White House of US President Donald Trump.
Dear friends, what this election result means for the fate of the homeland and the nation, and what its deeper or higher meaning is, this we don't know. Only time will tell, but no matter how it turned out, we will also serve our country and the Hungarian nation from the opposition.
According to results based on 46% of votes counted, the centre-right pro-EU Tisza party won 135 seats in the 199-member parliament ahead of Orban's Fidesz party. Speaking at Fidesz headquarters, Orban said the results were not yet final, but the situation was clear. He described the outcome as painful but clear. Record voter turnout was reported on election day, with long queues seen outside polling stations in Budapest. At 16:30 Greenwich Mean Time, around half an hour before polls closed, turnout stood at 77.8%, significantly higher than in previous elections.
The task that lies before us is clear. The weight of governance is not on our shoulders, so our job is to strengthen our communities. 2,500,000 voters trusted us. We want to give them this message. We will never let them down. And I don't even need to say, since we have been together for more than 30 years. We've lived difficult and easy, beautiful and sad years, but there is one thing everyone should know, here and in the whole country. We'll never give up. Never, never, never. We will never give up.
If confirmed, the result could bring an end to Orban's 16 years in power and have wider implications for Hungary, the European Union and Ukraine. The shift could ease Hungary's hardline stance within the EU and potentially unlock financial aid for Ukraine that had been blocked by Orban. It could also lead to the release of EU funds to Hungary that have been frozen over concerns about the country's rule of law and democratic standards.
And many European leaders have been watching the elections closely. Poland's Prime Minister has welcomed Peter Magyar's win, and French President Emmanuel Macron has congratulated Hungary's new leader. But now the next steps will be on whether his party will deliver sweeping reforms.
The victory of the centre-right Tisza party in Hungary's national election is being seen as a political turning point for the country. We have done it. Tisza and Hungary have won this election, Magyar said in his address. Following the vote held on April 12th, thousands of supporters gathered in central Budapest along the Danube embankment to celebrate Peter Magyar's win.
Fantastic! Absolutely brilliant, yeah.
Very happy.
Been waiting for this for a very long time. This will change everything in Europe, everything. This country is a fine country. It's been for 16 years almost in an autocratic regime, and it's a really big impact on Europe, the way that this Prime Minister has supported Russia and has the eyes of the US all over it. And this is a really big moment for Europe, we think. And especially for the Hungarian people. I think they have suffered too long under this government, and now it's time for a change.
What it certainly means, though, is change.
Yes.
Much needed change after 16 years of the same ruling. It's about to change now.
Record voter turnout in the election underscores that many Hungarians viewed the vote as a decisive moment for the country's future.
And Peter Magyar's election win in Hungary has drawn strong reactions from across the world. Leaders are calling it a turning point for the country's relationship with the European Union.
Global leaders have widely welcomed the election victory of Peter Magyar, describing it as a major political shift for Hungary and its relationship with the European Union. China's foreign ministry hailed Peter Magyar's election win and said it is ready to work with Hungary's new government to strengthen cooperation and bilateral ties. Across Europe, congratulations poured in shortly after the result, with European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen saying Hungary has chosen Europe and describing the outcome as a return to the country's European path. French President Emmanuel Macron, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz and other EU leaders also welcomed the result, expressing hope for closer cooperation and a more united Europe. From the United Kingdom, Prime Minister Keir Starmer called the outcome an historic moment, not only for Hungary, but for European democracy, adding that he looked forward to working with Magyar on security and prosperity. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk described the result as a glorious victory, while welcoming what he called Hungary's renewed place alongside Poland and Europe. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky also congratulated Magyar, saying Ukraine was ready for closer cooperation and stronger regional stability. In the United States, President Donald Trump did not immediately comment, while Democratic lawmaker Hakeem Jeffries criticized outgoing leader Viktor Orban in reaction to the result. Magyar said the vote showed Hungary's desire to rejoin Europe's political mainstream, as EU leaders signalled readiness to work with the new government and strengthen ties moving forward.
The US military says it will block all maritime traffic entering and exiting Iranian ports starting today at 6 p.m. Tehran and Baku time. The move comes after US-Iran talks ended without a deal in Pakistan. Both sides say key disagreements remain, especially over Iran's nuclear program.
US President Donald Trump said Sunday the US Navy would swiftly begin a blockade of ships entering or leaving the strategic Strait of Hormuz after US-Iran ceasefire talks in Pakistan ended without an agreement. In a post on Truth Social, Trump said negotiations had gone well and that most points were agreed, but confirmed the two sides failed to reach a deal on Iran's nuclear program. Speaking to reporters after disembarking Air Force One, Trump struck a confident tone, saying very good things were happening regarding the Strait of Hormuz, while also describing Iran as being in a weakened position.
I think Iran is in very bad shape. I think they're very desperate. We had a meeting that lasted 21 hours. We understand the situation better than anybody, and Iran's in very bad shape. And just so you understand, Iran will not have a nuclear weapon. Will not have. There is no way that they're going to get. They still want it, and they made that clear the other night. Iran will not have a nuclear weapon.
United States Central Command said the blockade would begin on Monday and apply to all Iranian ports, adding it would be enforced impartially against vessels of all nations. However, the command clarified that ships travelling between non-Iranian ports would still be allowed to pass through the strait, limiting the broader impact on global shipping routes. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said early Monday that US maximalism and shifting goalposts led to the collapse of what he described as a near-complete agreement during talks in Islamabad. The negotiations, held in Pakistan on Saturday, were the first direct talks between the United States and Iran in more than a decade, and the highest-level discussions since the Iranian Revolution.
Turning to Lebanon and Israel, both countries are set to hold initial talks in Washington this week, raising cautious hopes for a ceasefire. But on the ground, violence continues.
Lebanon and Israel are set to hold an initial meeting on Tuesday at the US State Department in Washington in a step toward possible ceasefire negotiations. The Lebanese presidency says the talks will focus on formalising a ceasefire and setting a timeline for further discussions, with US officials mediating. The move follows direct contact between Lebanese and Israeli ambassadors in Washington. But Israel says the current US-Iran ceasefire does not apply to Lebanon, keeping the situation volatile. In Beirut, many residents say they have little confidence in the talks as violence continues to escalate. More than 90 people were killed in Israeli airstrikes on Saturday, according to Lebanon's health ministry, bringing the overall death toll since March to more than 2,000.
There is around 10% hope that the negotiations succeed, only 10%. Because of one reason, the United States and Israel are deceivers. They can negotiate with you on something, and negotiations change with them to another thing. For example, they negotiated and a ceasefire happened, and Lebanon was meant to be included in the ceasefire. In moments, things changed, and they removed Lebanon from the ceasefire.
Your enemy is not someone you can expect safety from. They will not give you safety. As you can see, the destruction here, there was no warning. Nothing at all. Children and women. What can I say to you more? More destruction than this? It's unjust. Truly unjust. Lebanon does not deserve this.
Meanwhile, exchanges of fire continue. Hezbollah says it carried out drone attacks on Israeli targets, while Israel says it struck rocket launchers overnight. Air raid sirens sounded in northern Israel, while fresh strikes were reported in southern Lebanon, with casualties confirmed.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the fighting in Lebanon will continue during a visit near the border on Sunday. He described ongoing military operations in southern Lebanon as part of a security effort against Hezbollah. In a video statement, he said Israeli forces would maintain operations inside the area he referred to as a security zone.
The war continues, including within the security zone in Lebanon, where I was just a short while ago. What we are seeing is that we have thwarted the threat of an invasion from Lebanon thanks to this security zone. We are pushing back the danger of anti-tank fire and also dealing with indirect fire. But there is still more work to be done. We have done tremendous work, achieved enormous accomplishments, but there is still more to do, and we are doing it.
Australia has appointed Lieutenant General Susan Coyle as the first woman to lead its army, marking a historic change in the country's military leadership. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese announced that Coyle, currently Chief of Joint Capabilities, will take over as Chief of Army in July. Coyle, who joined the military in 1987, becomes the first woman to command any branch of Australia's Defence Forces in its 125-year history. The reshuffle also includes top defence leadership changes as Australia continues to modernise its military and boost female representation in the armed forces.
Her achievement means that she will be the first woman to command a service in Australian history, and it is a deeply historic moment, one that should be noted. As Susan said to me, you cannot be what you cannot see. And Susan's achievement will be deeply significant to women who are serving in the Australian Defence Force today and women who are thinking about serving in the Australian Defence Force in the future.
Donald Tusk and Lee Jae-myung have agreed to deepen cooperation between Poland and South Korea, with defence industry ties at the centre of a new strategic partnership. During talks in Seoul, both leaders said they would expand cooperation beyond arms sales to include joint production, technology transfers, training and industrial development. Donald Tusk said the two countries should work together toward a new geopolitical order, calling South Korea a key defence partner. The leaders also discussed broader cooperation in energy, supply chains and advanced industries, as well as the need to stabilise global supply chains amid ongoing conflict in the Middle East. Pope Leo begins a 10-day visit to Africa, calling for greater global attention to the continent. He travels to 4 countries and kicks off in Algeria today and continues to Cameroon, Angola and Equatorial Guinea. He will visit 11 cities and travel around 18,000 kilometres. The Pope is expected to deliver 25 speeches on a range of issues. A major event is planned in Cameroon, where hundreds of thousands of people are expected to attend.
Questo viaggio rappresenta davvero un'opportunità preziosa.
Spain's Prime Minister is in China for his 4th visit in as many years, underlining Madrid's efforts to deepen ties with Beijing despite growing geopolitical tensions. For more, we go to Mahnur Maktoum in Beijing.
Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez is on a 5-day visit to China, his 4th trip to the country in just 4 years, highlighting Spain's push to strengthen economic and strategic relations with the world's 2nd-largest economy. During the visit, Sanchez is expected to hold talks with Chinese President Xi Jinping, Premier Li Qiang and other senior officials, with discussions focused on boosting trade, investment and cooperation in sectors such as green energy, technology and the digital economy. The repeated visits reflect a deliberate strategy by Madrid to maintain strong engagement with Beijing, even as other Western nations adopt a more cautious approach towards China. Spain has positioned China as a key economic partner, with bilateral trade exceeding $50 billion and a growing interest in Chinese investment across industrial and energy sectors. Sanchez has also used the trip to call for a greater Chinese role in global governance, urging Beijing to contribute more on issues including climate change, security and global inequality, while emphasizing the need for a more balanced and cooperative international order. Sanchez's 4th visit in as many years highlights the continued high-level exchanges between China and Spain and shows Madrid's intent to pursue an independent foreign policy that balances transatlantic ties with deeper engagement in Asia. Manu Maktoum, A-News, Beijing.
A major court ruling is expected in France on Monday in a long-standing case linked to cement giant Lafarge over allegations of involvement in the Syrian war. Here's more on that story.
Former executives of cement giant Lafarge, now part of Switzerland's Holcim, are set to hear the verdict in their long-running trial on Monday as a French court delivers a major ruling linked to allegations of terrorism financing during the Syrian war. The trial began in November 2025 and centres on claims that Lafarge, through its Syrian operations, made payments to armed groups during the conflict. Investigative judges allege around €5 million were paid between 2013 and September 2014 to groups including Islamic State and the Nusra Front, both listed as terrorist organisations by the EU. 8 people, including former executives, have been under investigation since 2017. During the final stage of the trial in December, the prosecutors told the court they were seeking convictions and prison sentences of up to 8 years in some cases, including 6 years for former CEO Bruno Lafont, as well as bans on holding senior corporate roles. In a separate US case, Lafarge admitted in 2022 that its Syrian subsidiary paid around $6 million to ISIS and the Nusra Front to keep operations running and allow passage through checkpoints, later agreeing to pay hundreds of millions in fines and forfeitures. The company also faces ongoing investigation over possible complicity in crimes against humanity for keeping its Syrian plant operating during the war. The ruling is expected to conclude one of the most closely watched corporate accountability cases linked to the Syrian conflict.
We'll take a short break now. When we return, we examine the political implications of Hungary's election results as Prime Minister Viktor Orban accepts defeat and questions emerge about the future of far-right politics across Europe. Stay with us. Hungary's long-serving Prime Minister Viktor Orban has conceded defeat in a closely watched election that many analysts see as a test of support for nationalist and far-right politics within Europe. Orban, who has led Hungary for over a decade, built his political identity on strong sovereignty-focused messaging, opposition to migration quotas and criticism of EU institutions. Joining me now to discuss the political implications of Hungary's election results is Gregory Matthew, political analyst joining us from Stockholm, Sweden. Welcome to the programme, Gregory.
Thank you, Delika. Good morning.
Morning to you. Now, Viktor Orban's defeat is being interpreted by some as a shift in voter sentiment. Do you see this as an isolated national outcome or part of a wider European trend?
Well, about the shift, it's not so much a shift because Mr. Magyar is still a conservative. I mean, you cannot really explain that there is a shift between left and right. It's a shift between a conservative and another conservative, but a more pro-European conservative. So, of course, national elections are always specific to the country where it is held. And I would praise the result as a demonstration of democracy. Yesterday it was also a victory for democracy. Elections were organized, elections were scheduled, they happened, and Mr. Orban indeed agreed to recognize his defeat, which is a sign of functioning democracy. It's not an isolated movement. As I explained in a former interview, it was a little bit of a fatigue with Mr. Orban, but maybe not with the policy of the conservative side. So we will see now Mr. Magyar government acting, and we will only, let's say, judge and analyze on the result of the action, because a program and statement during a campaign is something, but now it needs to be transformed in real politics.
Certainly. So as you put it, we're still looking at a conservative leader here, so from A conservative to B conservative. However, you did say that he was more pro-European. So what was the appeal, in fact? Was it just fatigue in terms of having Orban there for so long?
Well, it's partly that. Mr. Magyar also is explaining that all the problems of Hungarians are not from the Europe, and he is more willing to, let's say, open the door to more European cooperation. When Mr. Orban was not very famous for his sympathy for his colleagues, and he was a little bit isolated. Mr. Magyar's party is member of the EPP, which is the leading political force in Europe. Madame von der Leyen is member of EPP. They have the majority in the European Parliament. But nevertheless, Mr. Orban party is still present in Brussels. They still have a number of seats in the European Parliament, 11. They are part of the Patriots for Europe movement, which is the third political force in Europe. So it's still a conservative leadership. Immigration is still a topic for Mr. Magyar. But for the voters in Hungary, the most important concern was economic inflation, wages, the real weakness of the healthcare system, etc. So I think Mr. Magyar polarized on those topics, and that's what made the difference with Mr. Orban.
And Orban built his platform on strong national sovereignty, conservative social policies and opposition to EU migration quotas, as we've discussed. How influential have these themes been across Europe in recent years?
It is influential. The party of Mr. Orban at the level of European Parliament is the third forces. They are not member of the majority governing the European Parliament. but they have 84 seats. It's quite a huge number. If you add those seats to those of the ECR, the European Conservative and Reformist, plus the far right, it's quite a big number. So these thematics are indeed present across Europe. In Germany with the AfD, in France with the National Rally, in Italy Madame Meloni is not as such a crypto-communist herself. In Slovakia, it was a right-wing victory. There was election a few weeks ago in Slovenia, and the, let's say, populist leadership won more seats than before. So in Spain, there is also this trend, despite it's a socialist government, but this trend is existing. And in France, for the next presidential election, it is now, the pollsters are saying that Mr. Bardella and Madame Le Pen have 35 to 36% of intention of voters, which is high, and they are the first.
And Gregory, several far-right parties continue to perform strongly in European elections. Does Orban's loss suggest limits to the appeal of this political model?
I would be cautious with making definitive conclusion. As I said, country by country, it's a different situation. The UK is not anymore a member of the EU, but Mr. Farage also there as a strong power. This is maybe an illustration that the MAGA movement, because you know that Mr. Orban was quite much supported by the Trump administration, it is not very popular in Europe to be seen as endorsed by Mr. Trump, neither by Mr. Putin for sure, but in Romania, it was election, Mr. Simeon was supported by the Trump administration and he lost. In this case, Mr. Orban was supported and he lost. So this is not the end of nationalism and sovereignist in Europe at all. But it depends country by country. And this is also not the end of populism in Europe. And Mr. Magyar, we will see how he can transform his program into real politics. But there are some elements of populism in his campaign.
Okay, and as you said earlier, Hungary frequently challenged EU consensus under Orban's leadership. Could this result in improved relations between Budapest and Brussels?
It can, since Mr. Magyar is, as I said, a member of the EPP. So it's a different political group, and probably it will adopt a more consensual attitude with the EU. I mean, Mr. Orban was very conflictual. He was very much opposed to almost everything that the EU was promoting, except when it was time for him to cash billions from the EU funds. But Mr. Magyar is probably going to try to soften the relationship with the European Union and with NATO, because Hungary is also a member of NATO.
Mm-hmm. And Orban maintained relatively close relations with Russia compared with many EU leaders. How significant was foreign policy positioning in this election?
Honestly, for external observers, it was probably important. For Hungarian voters, and I would like to point out that it was 80% of participation, which is very high. I think it's a record in Hungary election. So that means that really people found that this election was very important for the future of their country, but more for economy, more for the system of education, more for the healthcare system. Mm-hmm. I'm not quite sure that they are really interested in their daily life about the external policy of their country.
And Europe's currently facing multiple pressures, including the Ukraine war, energy security concerns, migration debates. How might these factors shape political movements across the continent?
Well, about Ukraine, Mr. Magyar has made clear that, as Mr. Orban, he is not very much in favor of spending a lot of money with Ukraine, but he mentioned during his campaign that he is willing to improve national defense system, Hungarian defense. So that maybe indicate that he will more be participating in NATO, FARA, etc. But for Mr. Magyar, he will not surprise a lot of people, I would say, because we will see if he is really a former Fidesz or is still a Fidesz with another face. And Mr. Orban, by the way, is not disappearing from the political area. He will still have capacity to, let's say, pollute the debate in Brussels with his members of the European Parliament. Now, Mr. Magyar will represent Hungary in the European Council, so there will be no more Mr. Orban at the table. But in 16 years, they have developed a deep understanding of the functioning of the institution, and I'm not quite sure that they will give up so easily.
Okay, and lastly, Gregory, I know you said earlier that this is something that this dynamic is something that should be taken into consideration on a country-by-country basis, but could the Hungarian election result influence political momentum for similar parties in countries such as Italy, France or Germany? So I'll ask you these three specific countries.
In Germany, AfD is still sidelined, but they are growing election after election. And they were indeed very much aligned with Mr. Orban external policy towards Russia, for example. In France, National Rally, Madame Le Pen made a statement and she regret the defeat of Mr. Orban, so they were like partner and friends. But it will not really impact their campaign and their election in France. France is seeing itself as a big country, and it's a specific one. So, but the thematics, to come back to the thematics of Orban, are present in French campaign, and the traditional right wing in France are now adopting vocabulary that was not possible before. They are very much aligning their position to the far right. Italy, Madame Meloni is maybe a different kind of politician, because she is very clear about the relation with Russia. She is supporting Ukraine, and with Mr. Trump, it's not very clear. Mr. Trump, when he welcomed Europeans in the White House, he was praising Madame Meloni, look at her, she's so great, etc. I'm not quite sure that she was very much happy to hear that coming from Mr. Trump, because, as I said, anytime he's supporting officially a European politician, it doesn't turn very well at the end of the day.
Gregory, it's always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for your analysis today.
Likewise, Delikia. Thank you.
After the break, we'll take a look at the key stories shaping the region. Welcome back to A News. Turkey is continuing diplomatic efforts to support talks between Iran and the United States, following marathon talks in Islamabad that ended without producing a breakthrough. Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan has been in contact with key officials to assess the next steps. Here are the details.
Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan held a series of phone calls on Sunday with both U.S. and Pakistani officials to discuss the outcome of Iran-U.S. talks held in Islamabad over the weekend. According to Turkish diplomatic sources, discussions focused on positions presented at the talks and possible next steps in the negotiation process. Fidan also spoke separately with his Pakistani counterpart, Ishaq Dar, to assess the outcome of the talks. Iranian and U.S. delegations wrapped up more than 21 hours of face-to-face negotiations in the Pakistani capital early Sunday, without reaching an agreement. The talks were part of a broader diplomatic initiative aimed at de-escalating tensions following weeks of conflict between Iran and a joint U.S.-Israeli military coalition. Held behind closed doors, the talks reportedly covered several issues, including Iran's nuclear program, uranium enrichment, regional security, and the reopening of the Hormuz Strait to commercial shipping. Pakistan has played a key mediating role, hosting the talks and coordinating with regional actors, including Turkey. The negotiations came after a sharp escalation that has left more than 3,000 people dead in strikes on Iran since late February, according to Iranian figures. Tehran responded with retaliatory attacks across Israel, Iraq, Jordan, and Arab Gulf countries hosting U.S. assets before a fragile two-week ceasefire was announced last week. Despite the lack of a broader agreement, officials say diplomatic contacts remain ongoing. Turkey is actively engaged in the diplomatic push, maintaining dialogue with both Western and regional actors in hopes of sustaining momentum towards a negotiated solution. This is Adam Morrow for A News in Istanbul, Turkey.
Speaker of Iran's parliament, Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, issued a stern warning on possible unprecedented fuel prices in the US, following President Donald Trump's threat of naval blockade of Iranian ports in the Persian Gulf and Sea of Oman.
Iran's Speaker of Parliament, Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, issued a statement on social platform X, strongly warning the Americans of extraordinary high fuel prices after U.S. President Donald Trump threatened to blockade the Strait of Hormuz to Iranian vessels. Ghalibaf said, "Enjoy the current growth figures. With such a blockade, soon you will be longing for gasoline at a price of $4 to $5. Also, a senior Iranian MP said that a draft bill has been tabled at the parliament on the control of the Strait of Hormuz by Iran. According to Abbas Goudarzi, a spokesperson for the parliament's presiding board, the bill proposes prohibition of the passage of vessels of countries with which Iran is in conflict through the strait. While the deadlock in Iran-US talks continues, Tehran holds its grip on the strategic waterway as its bargaining chip in the ceasefire talks held following the Israeli-US war on Iran, which broke out in February and lasted for 39 days. Revolutionary Guards Navy said in a statement on Sunday that it will consider military vessels approaching the Strait of Hormuz as ceasefire violation, the Guards Sepah News website reported, saying that the waterway is under the smart management of Iran. It added that the strait is open only for the safe passage of non-military vessels. Turaj Shiralilu, Tehran, for A News.
Azerbaijan reopened its embassy in Tehran on Sunday. The mission will initially operate with a limited number of diplomatic and administrative staff, including the ambassador. Baku said the swift reopening underscores the special importance Azerbaijan attaches to its relations with neighbouring Iran. Baku withdrew its diplomatic personnel from Tehran and from the country's consulate in Tabriz on the 6th of March, a day after a drone attack launched from Iranian territory toward Azerbaijan's Nakhchivan Autonomous Republic. Global energy markets are once again under pressure as geopolitical tensions in the Middle East prompt major import-dependent economies to rethink their supply chains. South Korea is now among those moving to secure alternative sources, with Kazakhstan emerging as a key potential partner. Our correspondent Fariza Kalimurzina has more from Almaty.
South Korea is close to finalizing a deal to import crude oil from Kazakhstan, according to Reuters, as Asian countries step up efforts to secure alternative energy supplies amid instability in the Middle East. Industry Minister Kim Jong-un said on Sunday that negotiations have made significant progress, with specific volumes and details expected to be announced early next week. He added that Kazakhstan is becoming part of Seoul's broader strategy to reduce dependence on Middle Eastern oil. Earlier this month, South Korea's Chief of Staff Kang Hoon-sik and Industry Minister Kim visited Kazakhstan to discuss potential shipments of crude oil and naphtha, as concerns persist over disruptions linked to the Strait of Hormuz. Kim also noted that distance is not a major barrier, saying deliveries from Kazakhstan take around 50 to 60 days, similar to shipments from the United States. South Korea remains heavily dependent on imported energy, with around 70% of its crude oil coming from the Middle East. But the rising geopolitical risks are pushing Seoul to widen its supplier base, including commitments from other producers such as the United Arab Emirates, which agreed last month to supply 24 million barrels of oil. Japan is also moving in the same direction, with more than 90% of its oil imports coming from the Middle East. Tokyo is looking to diversify supply routes. Japanese energy company INPEX is considering redirecting part of its supplies from Kazakhstan and Azerbaijan to the domestic market, as previously reported. But rerouting shipments away from the Strait of Hormuz can take up to 55 days instead of about 20, increasing costs and adding pressure on global energy markets. Fariza Kalimurzina, Almaty, A News.
Afghanistan's foreign ministry says a fresh diplomatic contact has taken place between Kabul and Ankara, with discussions also focusing on the recent Kabul-Islamabad talks in Urumqi. The meeting comes as Afghanistan describes its latest engagement with Pakistan as positive, although Islamabad hasn't yet publicly commented on this latest development. Our correspondent Tamim Bahis has more from Kabul.
According to a statement from Afghanistan's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Turkish envoy in Kabul, Sadina Yildiz, met on Sunday with Foreign Minister Amirkhan Muttaqi, where both sides discussed regional developments and the negotiations recently held in Urumqi, China. The Afghan Foreign Minister says Muttaqi described relations between Afghanistan and Turkey as positive and appreciated what he called Turkey's earlier mediation efforts. On the talks with Pakistan, Muttaqi said so far the discussions have been positive, provided that minor technical issues do not hinder the progress of the negotiations. For his part, Turkish envoy Sadina Yildiz said positive relations between Afghanistan and Pakistan are of special importance to Turkey and stressed that Ankara will continue its efforts in this regard. While Kabul is presenting the latest talks context as constructive and signaling cautious optimism over the Urumqi process, there is still no fresh public response from Pakistan on this latest development. However, Islamabad has previously said military operations would continue as part of what it describes as its campaign against militant safe havens and cross-border threats. For now, the message coming from Kabul is that diplomatic engagement is continuing, with Turkey again positioning itself as a supportive regional actor, encouraging better ties between Afghanistan and Pakistan. Tamim Bahis in Kabul, A News.
Now we'll take a short break. When we return, we will look at regional diplomacy as Azerbaijan resumes operations at its embassy in Tehran, following recent developments linked to the US-Iran ceasefire. Stay with us.
And welcome to Primetime. What a show we've got lined up for you today. In a complex world, clarity is power. hours live, diplomacy dissected in a spin-free environment. That's Prime Time with me, Guy Schoen, weekdays on A News.
As America sleeps, Europe is waking, and the East has begun its day. A News is right here at the center, bringing you the latest stories as they break. I'm Nadia Jani, here with you each weekday morning to share latest world news and the stories shaping our region. Across all platforms and wherever you get your news, we explore the context behind the big headlines. Live from Baku, I bring you a diverse mix of regional and international news, sport and politics for you, an audience that wants a bit more. So join me Monday to Friday for the latest headlines, expert analysis and live updates from around the world. Around the globe and live from Baku, this is Daybreak here on A News.
Welcome back to A News. Azerbaijan has resumed operations at its embassy in Tehran after a period of suspension, signalling a potential improvement in diplomatic engagement between the two neighbouring countries. The reopening comes amid a broader environment shaped by the recent two-week ceasefire linked to the Iran war as regional actors reassess diplomatic relations. Our relations between Baku and Tehran have experienced tensions in recent years, making the resumption of embassy operations an important step toward restoring dialogue. Let's bring in our guest now. Ali Hussein Guluzada, expert on the South Caucasus and Iran, joins us from Rome, Italy. Ali Hussein, welcome to the program.
Greetings, thank you very much.
Now, Azerbaijan has resumed embassy operations in Tehran after a period of closure. Is there, in your view, a correlation with talks held in Pakistan over the Iran-US-Israel conflict? Why has the reopening come at this time?
First and foremost, it speaks to the special relationship between the two countries and the importance Iran holds in Azerbaijan's foreign policy. It's worth noting here that since the new Iranian government and President Masoud Pezeshkian came to power, bilateral relations between Baku and Tehran have begun to improve once again. Therefore, this aspect is also significant in the context of the reopening of the Azerbaijan embassy in Tehran, and especially in the current situation.
And diplomatic missions often play an important role during periods of regional tension. Does this indicate a willingness from both sides to maintain communication despite this broader geopolitical uncertainty?
The answer is likely positive. Naturally, we mustn't forget that Iran is a special country to Azerbaijan. After all, a far greater number of Azerbaijanis live in Iran, especially in Iranian Azerbaijan, than in the Republic of Azerbaijan. Therefore, what's happening in Iran cannot fail to concern Azerbaijan. It's also worth noting that in addition to the embassy in the Iranian capital, there is also an Azerbaijani consulate general in the city of Tabriz. Naturally, against this backdrop, diplomacy plays a significant role, particularly during periods of tension.
Okay, and as I said earlier, the reopening does come amid this current ceasefire setting linked to the Iran war. Could regional developments be influencing diplomatic recalibration in terms of the bilateral relations between the two countries?
I believe that a review of diplomatic relations between Baku and Tehran can now take place exclusively in a positive context. That's not a let's say it's a convergence of position of the resolution of certain pressing issues on the bilateral agenda. The current war in Iran has once again demonstrated who Tehran's true friends and partners are, and from whom it really ought to distance itself. I'm confident that Iran has drawn conclusions from this difficult period, including regarding its relations with Azerbaijan.
And Azerbaijan and Iran share important economic and geographic links. Can you tell us about the importance of stable dialogue between these two countries?
It should be not that prior to the outbreak of the war, the new Iranian government led by Masoud Pezeshkian had begun pursuing a policy of restoring bilateral relations with Azerbaijan. Just before the war began, Azerbaijan and Iran signed important economic and strategic documents, and trust had been partially restored, mostly restored. We must, of course, mention the, for example, Aras Corridor project, the full-scale implementation of which has so far been delayed for objective reason. And of course, with turning to the economy, there is also the issue of border closures, objectively, which affects economic relations between the two countries. However, the official position in Baku on this matter is that the current regime is being maintained due to COVID. Nevertheless, some official circles in Baku claim that the closure of Iran-Azerbaijani border is also due to the security considerations. And if we take into account the events related to the current war in Iran, or situation in Iran, this calculation is fully justified today by Baku. And of course, with regard to this specific period, it's also important to mention that during the current situation, the Iranian and Azerbaijani presidents have held periodic telephone conversations, and Azerbaijan has sent humanitarian convoys to Iran on several occasions. This speaks to the trust and importance of a stable dialogue between Baku and Tehran.
Okay, and let's have a look at connectivity. Iran plays an important role in regional transport and connectivity routes. How relevant is cooperation in this area?
In this area, especially after the post-war period, let's say, it's clear that this issue will be doubly relevant for Iran. And as I noted above, the practical implementation of Aras Corridor will likely be a priority, as well as other aspects of bilateral relations. It's also worth noting the North-South International Transport Corridor, in which Russia is also involved. Here, of course, it's worth highlighting the construction of the Astara-Rasht-Gazvin railway line, which will connect the existing railways of Russia, Azerbaijan, and Iran, and the main objective of which is the integration of the transparent information of other corridors of Russia, Azerbaijan, Iran, and India also. This is also in Baku's interest, because Azerbaijan is, one might say, on the path to becoming a pivot state. And the fact no regional event takes place without Baku's involvement. Moreover, in the recent years, Azerbaijan has shown an interest in strengthening relations with the countries of the global south. Therefore, specifically regarding the development of regional economic logistics, we should expect positive developments in this direction following the end of the current conflict between the United States, Israel, and Iran.
Ali Hussein, thank you for your time today. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And that's the news for this hour. Stay tuned to A News for all the latest updates.